It's time for the Spoony One! Wrestling Show! It's time for the Spoony One! Wrestling Show!
I'm just gonna throw you a statistic or two. I didn't know this, but my Twitter followers very helpfully informed me of these more precise numbers. The total amount of wrestling on TNA Impact, 6 minutes. 2-hour show. 6 minutes. That's what? Wow. That's 5% of the show? Yeah. 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 Okay, there's a few, okay. When you're making a wrestling show, there's a lot of ways to go about it. You know, clearly there's a lot of ways. That like shimmer and glow and even Wrestlicious. And I would never call Wrestlicious a quality show by any stretch of the imagination. But the one thing that every wrestling show has that pretty much defines it is they don't forget the wrestling! Well, you know what? That's not fair. They didn't forget the wrestling. They didn't forget. They didn't care. They actively avoided putting wrestling in their wrestling program. And that doesn't make sense to me. And honestly, if I'm being more accurate, I don't buy the 6-minute figure. I don't buy it. It can't have been 6, because I'll tell you why. Here it is. I know wrestling shows have overruns. Raw routinely goes 5-10 minutes past the hour. This just happened. So it's slightly longer than 2 hours. But my PVR cuts off at like a 5-minute overrun. Alright? When my PVR cut off, the last match hadn't even started. They were coming down the ramp and my PVR cut off. So, it had to be less than 6. I was guessing not more than 5. But when I'm splitting hairs like that, that's how much wrestling is on this show. I don't get what do they think? What did they think I tune in to see them act? I guess partially. Like, do they think I tune in to see they must think I tune in to marvel at the exquisite Vince Russo, Tommy Dreamer storylines. I don't. I don't. We don't. Honest to God, the only thing that TNA ever had over the WWE was new and exciting talent that would put on matches you couldn't see on WWE programming. You're not giving us much of a reason to watch anymore, guys. Really. And the hell of it is, I actually thought for a long time, like, I may be repeating myself here, but like, I stopped to think. Maybe this isn't targeted at me. It's definitely not targeted at me, but who is it targeted at? I don't know. Because my first thought is that it's targeted towards children. Because only a child could buy this shit. Like, the gaps in logic here are just tremendous. And even a child would ask questions about some of this stuff, and I'll get to that. But then I'm like, no, it can't be. Because they make reference, there's the matches, like, there's bleeding in every show, like catastrophic amounts of bleeding. Ric Flair bleeds he bleeds just walking down the ramp, he punched himself in the face. Abyss, the motherfucker bleeds every time he goes down there. Rob Van Dam, he bleeds all the time. The ECW guys, they bleed all the time. It's one of the bloodiest shows on television, and it's real. Like, the blood is, you know, but, like, it's not aimed for kids, but with all the references to WCW and the fall of WCW and the backstage politics of Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff and Jeff Jarrett and Dixie Carter and Sting, it has to be aimed for people at least my age who are knowledgeable about this sort of thing. And I'm not even that knowledgeable about it, so I'm more knowledgeable than most, but that's not saying much. Like, and you really think those people are going to keep watching this? Like, the people who watched WCW knew it sucked. I don't get it, man. Jesus Christ. I haven't even talked about this show. Here's what I'm getting at. I gotta do something. This is the worst show. I don't even know what. This is phenomenal. There's gotta be someone at Spike TV who watches this shit. There's gotta be some kind of quality control. You'd think. Like, these guys wrote a check. They're like, yes, we want this on our show. Did they watch it? They can't have. Somebody's getting blown. Gotta be. I'm not saying Dixie's, but somebody's getting blown. That's the only explanation to put 3 hours of this garbage weekly. My God. And the hell of it is? You know what the hell of it is? I gotta explain this shit. Because they don't explain it. Here it is. Starts off. Eric is talking to some guy we've never seen before. And Eric goes, "Oh, you're so-and-so, Dixie's lawyer." And the lawyer is like, he's honestly like one of those lawyers you see in a lawyer commercial who really can't talk on camera. He's like, "Come to Goldberg and Associates. We are the excellent traffic attorneys who will make sure you get paid." That's like, this guy is this fucking attorney. He must actually be Dixie's attorney, because that's like, they must have just called Dixie's lawyer and was like, "You want to be on camera?" He's like, "All right," because we gotta have someone believable as a lawyer. You know, he wasn't even so much believable as a lawyer. He was actually like, he was more believable as one of the actual clients on one of those lawyer commercials, like, "An anvil fell on my head, and Goldberg and Associates got me $20 million. Thank you, Goldberg and Associates." Like, that sort of thing. Like, gee. So, Eric Bischoff is now in, like, full-on cheeky, smug bastard mode. Like, cranked up to 11. Like, he's smiling, he's got this huge grin on his face, and like, everything he says is sarcastic as all shit. So, his first comment is, he says, "Nice contracts you drew up." And the lawyer says that he's gonna, like, he can expect a lawsuit because Eric changed the contracts and Dixie signed them all under false pretenses. And Eric, still smiling, kind of does this "who, moi?" thing, like, you know, that whole, you know how Eric is. And he doesn't even deny it. And in fact, he doesn't deny it at all. He's like, "Me? Lie?" And so he says, if he wants to file a lawsuit, he's free to. If he wants to be tied up in court for 5-6 years, a jury will never buy it because Dixie signed it in front of millions of people. In the meantime, the lawyer is trespassing, and so Eric kicks him out, and he even laughs maniacally. This is unbelievable. And okay, first of all, I have to explain, because they don't explain this. I have to explain what the fuck they're talking about. The contracts that Dixie signed, they don't show this. On this show, Eric just goes, "Nice contracts you drew up, pal." If you hadn't seen Impact, they didn't even show this on the pay-per-view. If you don't know what's going on, what happened was, Abyss holds Dixie Carter hostage. And that was the last straw for Dixie. Dixie's like, "Eric, I want you to fire Abyss. today. And so Eric tries to fire Abyss, and Rob Van Dam is like, I want a match with him, you make it happen. So he goes backstage, and he hands a sheaf of papers to her on Impact. Like, this is like 2 weeks ago. And so he says, here you go, Dixie, these are the termination papers for Abyss. And without even looking, she signs it and hands it off. And that's what they're talking about. Did we get a clip of this? Did we get a recap of this pivotal moment in the history of TNA? No, of course not. We're just mentioned contracts, which are never seen before this or since, more than likely. And the lawyer is completely defeated by this. He's like, you haven't heard the last of me, and he gets in his car and he leaves. This court. And this is where I started thinking, like, maybe a kid would buy this, but even a kid would be like, that can't happen. Like, if I handed you a piece of carbon paper and you signed it and there was like a check underneath it and I just filled in any number I want, that wouldn't hold up because I didn't tell you what you were signing. Like, if I gave you a contract and told you it was one thing and you signed it and I was like, ha ha ha, I own your house. No. That is wrong. That's why we have courts. And in fact, like, everything that has happened so far would ensure this to be the fastest fucking god-awful turnaround of a fraud case in U.S. court history. Because Eric's only argument is that, well, she signed it on national TV in front of millions of people. Yeah, you committed an act of fraud, an obvious act of fraud, and you have the entire United States as witness to your fraud. This is beyond Looney Tunes logic. You know, okay, here's how it goes. I wrote this down. I wrote this whole dialogue down. I wrote a little play in 20 seconds for you. We're in the judge's chambers. The lawyer says, Your Honor, this is my fax record. This is a record of the contract I faxed to Eric Bischoff. And this is the contract that Eric passed to Dixie, that Dixie signed. These two do not match! Case dismissed. Or, like, guilty. Eric Bischoff fucking guilty. 20 years in federal pound-me-in-the-ass penitentiary. My God. But now, Eric comes out, and the announcers have to explain this to us. Because we still don't know what the fuck's going on. And Mike Tenay says that because of the contracts that Dixie signed, Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan now own the controlling share of the company over Dixie. So now we have multi-million-dollar fraud. Like, grand larceny on a huge scale. This is amazing. And then Hogan gets in the ring, and he's Hollywood Hulk Hogan now. Because, of course. This whole thing is the reformation of the NWO, because we have to do it. This whole thing is really, like, if you're talking about the fall of WCW, like, the horrible, agonizing, several years long death of WCW, it's almost like they're compressing those years into 3 hours of time. And they're doing a really great job of it. Like, doing everything they can to compress the fucking failure of WCW into, like, 3 hours. This is, like, Vince Russo. Vince Russo might as well just be, like, just spooging on the camera. Like, honestly, that would be more entertaining. At least something would be happening that I could understand. You know, just watching a man violently spooge on a camera lens, that I can comprehend. I don't appreciate it, but at least I can follow it. And I'm not, like, Jesus Christ. And at least, my girlfriend might get some entertainment out of that. I don't know. And so, Hogan has, like, the weakest excuse as to why he's doing this. Like, he doesn't even get up there and say, like, I just wanted the money, or I just wanted the power. No, he's got to have some kind of sob story, like, Dixie made me promises, and she never carried through on those promises. She promised to make me happy, and she wouldn't listen to me, and she promised that whatever I wanted to do, I'd get to do, and I didn't get to do that, and so I'm taking over. You think I'm kidding. That's probably more eloquent than Hulk Hogan managed to put the explanation. I don't know. And of course, now we have to explain the entire evil scheme, because this was a Machiavellian scheme that took like 3 months to unfold. And they even describe it in those terms. My favorite part is Bischoff and Hogan, they're like, nobody saw this coming. We outsmarted all of you. Everyone saw this coming. Everybody. So, they start off with Abyss. They say it all started with Abyss. So Abyss comes out, and he gloats for 5 minutes, and they say, like, it didn't make sense at the time, but this whole thing was orchestrated. This whole thing where Abyss turned heel on us. Oh yeah, and last week I said that RVD won the title from Abyss. I was wrong. I forgot. It was AJ Styles. Whatever. Like it matters. Like you followed it. God damn. Getting thirsty bitching about this already. Then they bring out Jeff Jarrett. And then, yeah, this is what gets to me about Jeff Jarrett, among many other things, is that Jeff Jarrett is now hugging and like high-fiving and is fully on their team, despite the fact that for months, when Eric Bischoff joined the company, he made Jeff's life a living hell. He literally on camera made him flip burgers, serve drinks, work concessions, and scrub toilets, and was directly responsible for numerous physical assaults on Jeff Jarrett's person. Like, he had him beaten unto the point of hospitalization in storyline. And Jeff Jarrett, it's all water under the bridge now. So Jeff, as if this wasn't stupid enough, he has to give his explanation as to why he had this part in taking over the company. I don't care. So he says basically Dixie stole his company from him. That Dixie used her daddy's money to buy a wrestling company she couldn't begin to comprehend. Jeff, so did you! Jeff, she paid you! She saved your company! Jeff, your company was failing when Dixie used her daddy's money to fucking save your fucking derelict ass. But he's not happy. Like, don't take her money, Jeff. Jeff. But again, this is all backstage politics, and that's the most gripping part of any wrestling program, because it all has to be real. It all has to be shooting. It all has to be about the real people, you know, like. She used, quote, she used her daddy's money to steal my wrestling company. It has been a pleasure to work with Eric Bischoff. Then 4chan comes out. And I knew this was going to happen. Because they can't do anything without doing a twist. So you think, Ric Flair and 4chan comes out, and, these guys have been feuding for over 25 years. So you'd think that, ever since the new group, which is called Immortal, by the way, they're like, we're running things, and that's been 4chan's whole thing, is that they say they're running things. So you think, oh, now basically 4chan's going to turn face, which honestly would have worked really well at this point, because Ric Flair gets a babyface reaction wherever he goes. People give Beer Money a babyface reaction wherever they go. AJ Styles, huge babyface. The only heel on that team is probably Douglas Williams. And even they'll probably cheer. Like Matt Morgan. Yeah, they'll boo him. Because Matt Morgan sucks. But, so like, you'd think they're setting up for some big team-on-team feud. But no, of course, we're trying to reform the NWO here. And the NWO was fucking monolithic with like 30 goddamn people in it. And of course had numerous sub-factions. So of course we got the sub-faction of 4chan now in the Immortal group. And of course, they get in there and Ric Flair hugs him. Because not only do we have to, like, it's almost hard to tell now, it is hard to tell now, which storyline we're ripping off. Because, my God, take your pick. NWO. When Eric Bischoff first joined the WWF and he hugged Vince McMahon, which was like, that must have been in their head where they're like, that was one of the most surreal moments in wrestling history. And in fact, if you look up surreal moments in wrestling history, that'll probably be number one on the list, is like when Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff hugged. So they're like, we'll just recreate that with Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. And so they did it. And so, Jesus. I know, I just kind of trail off into Jesus and then just face palm. But, like, this entire show is just a fucking freight train of failure. This has now been about 20 minutes, by the way. And there was a great quote, I had to rewind, and I still don't know how this factors into anything. Ric Flair says, quote, "I swear to God I'm going to get up every morning loving you more than I've ever loved anything in my life." I'm not taking that out of context. He just pretty much says that. Little gay. It's okay. I mean, it is wrestling, but I don't quite understand that one. Yeah. Then out comes Jeff for more talking. Jeff cuts a really lackluster, "You never cared about me, the fans never cared about me, I killed myself and you didn't care," kind of promo. Jeff is really bland. Jeff's one of those guys who the crowd loves him, but you never need to give that man the microphone. Like, ever. Ever. In fact, when you give him the microphone, it hurts his cause. It hurts it big. I've seen so many angles fail. Like, the first Jeff and Matt feud when they in WWE when they were fighting each other. The worst thing they ever could have done to that guy was give him a microphone. It was bad. It was a grim situation. Then more talking. They cut to Sting and Kevin Nash watching this on a TV backstage, and somehow Eric sees this. Apparently they put them watching the TV on the Titantron, so Eric sees them watching a TV. I don't know. So Eric, all smugly, calls them out to join them. He's like, there's room on the boat for everybody. Room on the fail boat for everybody. So they come out, and Nash says, in the past it would have been a perfect fit, but now, like, before he was all about the money, but not now. He says, back in the day he would have taken every dollar he could from everybody, but with age comes wisdom, and he's learned the value of family, so they can run the company on the ground without him. And Sting says basically the same thing. The answer is no. And so they start to leave. And by leave, I mean leave the company. Like, they basically say they quit. And it makes sense, because as I recall, Kevin Nash... What's funny is, as I recall on the Twitter feed, I was watching Kev's Twitter feed for a while, and apparently Kev is leaving because he wanted a raise in his contract. So he is in fact leaving over money. Good one, Kev. That's the big sexy, I know. Then my favorite part of the show made me laugh my ass off. This has now been about 25 minutes. They go to the back where we're still following Sting and Kev. The Pope confronts them. And it's one of those, like, backstage cameras where it's all handheld and dark and hard to see and hard to hear. Because they really like that. They follow the knockouts into the bathroom with the handheld camera, and they follow everyone backstage for those, like, cinema verite angles. So the Pope is, like, near tears. He can't believe what he's seeing. He's like, "You're leaving? But you can't leave me." And they're like, we can't do this anymore. They were like, we can't fight this, Pope. Come with us, man. We're gonna go have fun. And so, like, and Pope's like, "I'm making money here. I can't go." And so he's all sad, and he says, "You know what, guys? I'm gonna keep fighting. I'm gonna keep fighting the power here, and you guys can, like, I guess if you're going, you're going. I'm gonna stay and fight." And so they're like, "Good luck, man." So then Dixie runs into frame. Dixie stops Kevin Sting, and she says, "How can you leave me? You, of all people, how could you leave me?" she's looking at Sting right when she says this, saying, how could you leave me? Flashback to several months ago when Sting actually grabbed Dixie by the throat and choked her down to the floor. I didn't think you had that kind of feelings for Sting, Dixie, but guess I was wrong. And so you can barely hear them, but I think Kev says, what choice did we have? And Dixie says, you never told me this was going to happen. Like, you never told me this whole, you never warned me about fucking Eric and Hogan. And you can hear Sting or Kevin say, we did for a long time, and you didn't listen. And then Dixie said my favorite line. She says, quote, you talked in cryptic language. You spoke in tongues. If you'd spoken to me in plain English, I would have listened. Right there. Good night, everybody. I could just leave, right now. I honestly, this is what, it kills me, because it's like with lines like that, it's like they know they're writing a shitty story, and yet they continue to write the shitty story. It's like, it's either genius or colossal insanity and stupidity. I can't call it genius. They're not that smart. If they were putting... Actually, the only thing that might save my sanity is if this were some elaborate, postmodern, Colbert-esque parody. Some kind of satire of mid-fall WCW. If they were making a show like that, this might make sense. And honestly, if I lose many more of my marbles, I might actually latch onto this idea and start heralding this show as a workout. Honestly, you'll know that day has finally come when I just sit down and be like, I get it. But yeah, why? You spoke in cryptic language. You spoke in tongues. If you'd spoken to me in plain English, I would have listened. English. So then Hogan comes back. This is all still the same segment. This has now been about a half hour. So Eric and Hogan pull Dixie aside and they say, we're going to talk about this in my office. And Dixie says, I want you to look me in the eye and admit to me that you screwed me out of my company, because you did. I don't know why she knows this, but Hogan actually says, quote, you want me to look you in the eye? He takes his glasses off and he says, yes, I screwed you out of your company. Close quote. Yeah. I think if I were Dixie's attorney, I've just found my closing argument. I'd just put that on a clip and show it 100 times in a row. Yes, I screwed you out of your company. Yes, I screwed you out of your company. And so the whole time, I wrote this down. The whole time, Eric Bischoff is, I'm not kidding, sitting lean back, puffing on a cigar like a cartoon villain. How Scrooge McDuck, when he's just lavishing in his wealth, is just puffing on a gigantic fucking cigar, the size of his fist. And he's like, Eric Bischoff is doing this the whole time. It's so hard to take this seriously. And so Dixie shouts, this is your idea, Eric! Which, again, she knows this. And then Dixie says, you smug shit, which somehow managed to air on TV. And it aired twice, because it aired now, and they replayed it on, Reaction, the show after. I keep wanting to say Explosion, but yeah. She calls him a smug shit on air. Alright, so Dixie tries to have the security guards throw them out. But, of course, Eric informs them that they own the Praetorian Guard now. And so Gunner and Murphy, the two security guards, manhandle Dixie and drag her off. And that's when Surge leaps to the rescue. But the security guards hit Surge, and they knock him out. And they drag Dixie away screaming, Surge! 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 No! No! Surge! Who the fuck is Surge? I don't know. Why is Surge there? Why does it... Who is Surge? I've never seen Surge's face. I've never heard Surge talk. Madison Rayne comes out with new, incredibly shitty music. And I said, with music this crappy, I probably would have fought for the Beautiful People music too. It's that bad. She says Tara has the belt, but she also has her to thank for having a job because she brought Tara back. So she has to come out here and do the right thing because they had a deal. So Tara comes out, hands the belt over, and lays down for the 3 count. Madison wins the title. Already we're reenacting the worst, most bullshit angles in WCW. This is what I'm talking about when I say they're reenacting the fall of WCW. This, the finger poke of doom. They're already doing the lay down for a title win. Like, it's not like they didn't even stop for breath. They barely stopped for a commercial break. And they're already doing, like, the worst possible angle you could... Why is it so bad? Here's why. You may think, well, there's a circumstance where the title picture's so corrupt where somebody would just lay down for the title. Maybe, but here's the problem. Here's why you don't do this. And here's why it went over like a fucking lead balloon covered in fat people when WCW did it. You just paid, in today's day and age, probably $40 to $45 for a pay-per-view. And the main event of that pay-per-view is poke, guy falls down, 1, 2, 3. That's the title match you paid pay-per-view money for. You'd fucking riot. You'd fucking burn that building down. Now, this is the women's title, so A, who gives a shit, and B, it was on TV, so again, who gives a shit. But it's still stupid. It's a waste of time. You don't tune in to see this. It really is one of the worst... It's one of the worst ideas you could possibly book on a wrestling program because it doesn't involve wrestling, and it's just stupid. You just don't do it. You know, if they'd have come out and had a match, that I could have understood. If they said, Tara, you shouldn't have won the title. You got to come out here and do the right thing and give me a title shot. That I might have understood. That would have been smart. That would have been good programming. Of course not. Total wrestling time so far, 3 seconds, if you count that. Backstage in the Beautiful People's dressing room, a woman comes in and asks them where Cookie is. I had no idea who this was because I don't watch Jersey Shore. I had to look it up, and as soon as I looked it up, the announcers just said it. It's JWoww. I still don't know who JWoww is. I know she is a woman on Jersey Shore. That's as much as I know. And so she wants to know where Cookie is. And had I not seen Impact last week, I would not know who Cookie was neither. It saddens me that I actually know who Cookie is, and I actually don't know who JWoww is, but whatever. This is where it gets bad. They go to commercial. When we go back to commercial, JWoww and the Beautiful People are still wandering around backstage. Eric Young comes out and then proceeds to embark. I don't say this lightly. I really don't say this lightly. Eric Young proceeds to put on what could be the most annoying 3 minutes in the history of Impact. Let that sink in for a second. I will now reenact in very brief, what Eric Young was doing. Oh my God! 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 He does that for about a minute. He is apparently impressed with JWoww. Because, oh my God. And then he proceeds to repeat this. Am I a gorilla? 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 I'm your chimp. 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 Am I a gorilla? I'm your chimp. 3 minutes. The only reason I didn't change the channel was because I honestly thought I was having a nightmare. I was like, it was so surreally bad. This was supernatural. I was paralyzed. It was like one of those nightmares where you can't move. I just sat there, and my brother can testify to this. I just stood there pulling my own hair, just trying to, like, oh my God, oh my God, am I gorilla? Am I gorilla? When I finally snap, that's going to be the sound of it. Well, that and the sound of rifle shots. But when I finally come for you with my gun, it's going to be the last thing you fucking hear. It's like they're daring you to watch it. Just thinking about that segment, they hate you. They hate you and they don't want you to watch this show. Honest to God, I can't think of a way to get a show canceled faster than to put on something this bad. This is why every week I'm astounded this show is still on the air. Somebody's paying for this. There are promoters lined up. There are TV executives willing to air this shit. But if they saw this, that's what... I just got to get through this. I have to try. I'm sorry. It's every paragraph I've written here reminds you of something even stupider. Kurt Angle's in the ring. And my gorilla... He says he has to retire. He's dislocated his ribs, he's re-injured his neck. But first he wants to know why Eric and Hogan screwed him. But you know, he didn't win the championship like he promised he would. On the other hand, he didn't exactly lose the match either. Right away, I jumped to my feet and I screamed, "Fuck you!" Because I know this is how it's going to be. I know this is the loophole. This is how they're going to actually justify the fact that Kurt Angle has now lost numerous matches, but namely the world title match, but he's going to justify it by saying he doesn't have to retire because he wasn't pinned in the triple threat match. So technically, he didn't lose. Technically, you're a goddamn idiot. This is how it's going to happen. Jeff Jarrett comes out. Oh, goody. Jeff says he would never think he'd hear Kurt making excuses. Kurt, the Olympic gold medalist, the husband. Well, ex-husband. And of course, we have to bring up the specter of something in real life that happened about 1.5 to 2 years ago when Jeff Jarrett started fucking Kurt's wife. Because it all has to be real. All has to be shoot. Although, if you'd seen Karen Angle, I'd motor both those puppies too. Yeah. I'm just gonna skip. No, I'm not. Because this was stupid too. Basically, they argue about backstage politics for like 5 minutes. So far, there's been one match. 3 seconds. They're arguing about backstage politics. You couldn't possibly care. You couldn't even begin to care. They talk about how, like, Kurt was, Kurt made his life hell when he was in the business, and just how he signed Kurt when nobody else wanted Kurt because he was injury prone or something like that. I don't know. Basically involving, like, WWF shit and all sorts of... Yeah. So, basically what happens is that Jeff says, hey, I stole your wife and now I'm stealing your career because you lost. You're going to retire now. And so, Kurt jumps him, and security, Gunner and Murphy, again, after fresh off of escorting Dixie out of the building and knocking Surge out. Oh my God, Surge. They beat up Kurt and handcuff him. And so Jeff beats up the helpless Kurt and throws him into the stage. And he keeps beating up Kurt, who's now selling his neck injury because he got thrown into that stage hard. So he's hurt his neck, and he starts punching on Kurt. And guess who makes the save? Guess. You're wrong. No, not him either. No, really. Out of everyone who could have come out to save Kurt Angle, Mr. Anderson? No. Taz. Taz, the announcer, gets up from the table and pulls Jeff away. And he says, "You've done enough, go away." And Jeff backs down from Taz. You've got a locker room full of people. You've actually thrown out random wrestlers to make the save or to join a team when they were down shorthanded. And I've given them shit over it. But at least when you did it, it was a wrestler. Like when EV2 needed a fifth man, you had Brian Kendrick, for no reason, join the team. And I fucking busted your balls for that. But it was a wrestler. You just had Taz save Kurt Angle. Why? The only thing that would make sense is that Taz is going to wrestle a match with Jeff Jarrett, which will not happen. I promise you it's not going to happen. They might actually book a match, but Taz ain't wrestling. He can't wrestle. And booking a match with Taz and Jeff Jarrett would be one of the stupidest things I've ever done. But anyway. You've got a whole locker room full of people. You had every opportunity. You had a great opportunity to actually have someone make the save, turn someone babyface potentially, and book a match for later in the show. This isn't hard. But you had Taz do it. Taz, who can't wrestle a match. Taz, who doesn't manage anybody. Taz, who works the commentator's booth. Taz, who has nothing to contribute. You could have thrown Kendrick, anyone from EV2, really. You could have thrown in, like I said, Mr. Anderson. You could have thrown in the Pope, who the Pope actually has vowed to fight the good fight and fight the Immortal group, who has vowed to basically oppose Jeff Jarrett every turn. It would have made perfect sense if the Pope had come out to fight. He doesn't. No. Next segment. I gotta sneeze. No, next segment. They cut to Daytona Beach, where Samoa Joe's walking around. because he's there. Samoa Joe says he doesn't make many mistakes, but he made one in trusting Jeff Jarrett, and he's going to find him and take revenge. So I wrote, hey, here's an idea. Why couldn't you compress these two fucking worthless segments and have Joe be the guy who comes to save Kurt Angle? There's a thought. Have the guy who is currently feuding with Jeff Jarrett fight Jeff Jarrett. So then I thought, well, this is me thinking again. I thought, well, they might be actually trying to build up for a match later. Maybe Samoa Joe is injured as a result of his match at the pay-per-view somehow, because he got beat up by Kevin Nash and Sting. That was all I had. I was like, maybe he's not there. Maybe they're saying he's not at the Impact Zone. He's at Daytona Beach. So they're building up for a match later. Now, even so, I would still have Samoa Joe interfere and stop them from hurting Kurt because it makes sense. But I'm like, okay, he's at Daytona Beach. He can't. All right. So that brings us to our next match. Abyss versus Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe is in the Impact Zone. He was there. He easily could have saved Kurt Angle. He could have easily attacked Jeff Jarrett where he was. He knew where he was. He vowed revenge on camera just now. He could have taken his revenge on Jeff Jarrett. Abyss versus Samoa Joe. This is the first actual wrestling match of the show. And I believe it takes place at the 75-minute mark. If I'm wrong, correct me, please. But yeah, you actually had to suffer through 75 minutes of this shit to see any form of wrestling match. And I am not counting the Knockouts title match in which one woman laid down and immediately was covered. I'm not counting that. This match was insultingly short. Because basically what happened was one of them gets immediately clotheslined to the outside. Abyss picks up the ring bell and hits Joe with it for the disqualification. Joe wins, and Joe is all busted open. All that took probably no more than 90 seconds to 2 minutes. So in total, we have approximately 103 seconds of wrestling. Bell to bell, probably 2 minutes. Then RVD comes out to run Abyss off because Abyss is still beating up on Joe. And this reminded me of something. Rob comes out to fight off Abyss, and I think back to Bound for Glory, which was last week. Didn't Rob Van Dam hit Abyss in the stomach at least once, probably several times, with the nail-covered board? Abyss is fine. He was bleeding from the mouth at Bound for Glory after getting hit in the gut with Janice. He's totally fine now. He couldn't even take a week off. They couldn't even build that into the storyline where Abyss is hurt, so he doesn't want to wrestle a match, so he gets disqualified immediately because he's not up to wrestling a competitive match. He's not limping. He's not breathing hard. He's not even like grabbing at his stomach like it hurts. He's fine. He calls out Jeff Hardy, and Jeff appears on the Tron, and again has a really bad interview where he says he's the Antichrist of professional wrestling. Then Eric comes out, and he says if he wants a shot at Jeff at Turning Point, he has to win a match against Mr. Anderson, a number one contenders match. I was like, oh my god, we're actually booking a match. Holy shit. Then we go backstage. And it's Eric again, because Eric has to be in every single angle. Eric corners Miss Tessmacher. And no matter what she said, no matter what Eric says, she somehow turns it into a proposition for sex. It's kind of like Scarlett, really. No, I'm kidding. Don't hit me. I'm sorry. No, it's like everything he says. He's like, I'm trying to think of like the most inane things I could say that she would turn into sex, and she's like, he'd be like, "Oh, I've been looking for you," and she'd be like, "I've been looking for you," and he'd be like, "Maybe we should discuss this in your office," and she's like, "I know something we could discuss in your office," and Eric would be like, "Seriously, we've got some business we need to take care of," and she's like, "You want me to take care of your business, do you?" And Eric's like, "It's that easy, is it?" And she's like, "What is?" She's like, "It's that easy to get in your pants." Apparently it is. Apparently, all you gotta do is look at her and say something, and she will interpret this as a proposition for sex, one that she is eager to accept. She'll be like, "Hello," and she'll be like, "Hello yourself, pants off." Like, she'd be the greatest person to speak to on a drive-through intercom. Yeah. So, she says, Eric is mad. He's like, it's that easy. Like, you are such a hyper slut that you fucked Kevin Nash and you fucked the Pope, and you very nearly gave vital information as to my master plan to the Pope and Kev. And she's like, I don't know. And she's like, as my secretary, you're fired. So, the only way that you're going to keep a job around here is to lace up the boots and get in that ring, because that's all you're good for. Actually, that was a quote. He says, you better lace up your boots because, quote, that's all you're good for. Yeah, apparently Miss Tessmacher is no longer good enough to be Eric Bischoff's personal harlot. She's just good enough to be a professional wrestler. Apparently this is a dishonor. This is a demerit. This is a demotion. And she no longer leads the knockout division. She is busted down to being a professional women's wrestler. She's not even good enough to be a personal prostitute. The Pope, that next match. The Pope versus Beer Money Kazarian, AJ Styles, and Douglas Williams in a 5-on-1 handicap match. I wrote, this was actually a good match, believe it or not, because this match probably went on 3.5 minutes, and it was the longest match by far, and it had actually by far the best action in the entire show. And I wrote down, how bad does it make Sting and Kevin Nash that the Pope is sticking around to fight 5 men while they just quit? It makes Sting and Nash look like complete cowards. There's really no other way to unfold that one. Like, the Pope has serious balls in fighting 5 other guys, and Sting and Kev just quit. Because they love the company so much, they're just going to walk. Yeah, so that was pretty much all I had. Shore comes out. The team of, was it Robbie E. and Cookie? They come out. And Taz really started to struggle for some reason, trying to describe the color of JWoww's hair. He said, quote, "Strawberry blonde? I don't know, what is that?" Red? Her hair is red. It's red. Taz. It's red. Am I gorilla? I'm your chin. I'm your chin. Okay. So, I'm told on Twitter that Shore comes out and they do their usual shtick, or at least I say usual. They've only been doing it for a week. And then they start saying that Jersey Shore is full of posers. And of course that brings out JWoww, who I'm told on Twitter is getting paid 15 large for this appearance. Yeah. They just paid a useless peripheral character of Jersey Shore 15 large to participate in about 5 minutes of non-wrestling programming. I got a lot of issues with this thing, and actually I didn't want to talk about this, but I figure if I'm going to talk about one thing, I might as well talk about all of it. Hypothetical. You're a wrestler working for TNA. You're busting your ass. You are literally busting your ass. Your ass has been broken. You're Kurt Angle. You're someone out there. You're Amazing Red, who is getting thrown on his fucking head for a living. And knowing Dixie, knowing TNA, it's for peanuts. Then JWoww shows up, and they just hand her $15,000 for less than a night's work for essentially doing nothing. What do you think the locker room morale's like right now? Knowing that JWoww probably made more in 5 minutes than you did in 6 months? I'm guessing these wrestlers don't get paid much. In TNA, I don't think they get paid much at all. Unless you're like a headliner, I don't think they get paid. Not enough to live on. But I mean, I even know that the knockouts, or at least I've heard that the knockouts are barely getting paid enough to basically sustain themselves. So yeah, JWoww's getting paid 15 large for this. So Cookie picks a fight and slaps JWoww. So JWoww takes her down with what I can only describe as sumo palm strikes. And all I could think of, this is what I wrote down. My God, this is Charmel versus Jenna Maraska all over again. Oh Christ. Here's my other problem with this. You've got the chick from Jersey Shore going to show up and have a problem with the Shore guys. But they've only been around for like 10 minutes. Like, we've barely seen the Jersey Shore guys on WWE programming. And already we're pulling the trigger on like a Jersey Shore on Jersey Shore feud. This doesn't really make any sense. They haven't really even had time to hang out for a while and make themselves know. Seriously, if you hadn't seen last week, you would have no idea who these guys are. It's just, I'm trying to think of an equivalent for this in WWE. Jeez, who was a character who was like a knockoff character? I'm really struggling right now. Okay, let's say Santino comes out. This is Santino's debut week. This is a bad example, but let's say after 1 week you have Borat come out, and Borat picks a fight with Santino. You'd be like, this is sudden. Is Santino supposed to be a Borat ripoff? He's not, but, okay, that was a bad example, but you get what I'm saying, I think. Even I don't get what I'm saying, fuck it. So then we have RVD versus Mr. Anderson in a number one contenders match. My PVR cut out before it starts. This match in its entirety took place on Reaction. You don't pay me enough to watch 3 hours of TNA program. I do it anyway. You know what? There's gonna be a cost. We're gonna set up some kind of means of exchange here. I don't want you to pay me. Although, if you do, I certainly won't fight you on that particular urge. But This show has a price now. I want you, whenever I do an Impact review, I want you to post on Twitter to TNA Dixie. That's her name. I don't know what do I want you to post to Dixie? Something memorable, something so she'll remember me, something that you can fucking choke her inbox with, or whatever you call it when your mention list or whatever it is. Yeah, I think it's something. Maybe just like, I don't know. I'm gonna come up with something. You need to post to TNA Dixie my name. Maybe like Wrestle is better than your fucking clown shoes show, and then a link to my video. Do that. Do that. That's the price. That's the continued price for me watching this horse shit. I'm actually feeling a little better now. I was really mad before. I got really mad. I got really, really mad at the fucking Eric Young segment. Am I gorilla? Am I gorilla? I'm your chimp. Oh my god. I defy you. If that clip is on YouTube, find it. I defy you to watch all of it. See, already I'm mad again. This was a good match. RVD versus Mr. Anderson. It was okay. It was a good match. That's just about all I can say. It was the longest match by far. As I recall on Twitter, they said it was 9 minutes long. But I'm not counting it on Impact, because it wasn't on Impact. It wasn't on Impact. In 2 hours, they failed to put on more than 6 minutes of wrestling. It was unbelievable. So basically, what happened was they had this really long match, and then Jeff Hardy comes out and basically hits them both with the chair. And so what happens is it's really hard to describe, actually. Jeff Jarrett knocks them both down and then sticks Anderson's arm in the chair to Pillmanize his arm, right? But he Pillmanizes Anderson's arm by hitting the twist of fate on RVD on the chair at the same time, so it was like a double whammy. And so I really hope this doesn't stick around. Taz calls it the twist of hate. It's not that bad. But really not feeling this Jeff Hardy thing. I do like Jeff's music now better than that fucking retarded stuff that was... I think it was actually him singing that theme song. It probably still is him singing his theme song, but it's better. It's not a whole lot better, but it's better. I hated that old song. It was like this... It's garbage. Yeah. That was it. And if it... I'm thinking to myself, I didn't do a very good job covering the wrestling matches, but really, I probably talked more about the wrestling matches than the wrestling matches took to complete. This show is awful. And I don't know what's going to happen next week, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to get any better. Because they've still got, like... Here's what kills me about Reaction, too. Reaction is the third hour of TNA programming, and it's all backstage interviews. Like, it's all supplementary material to the storylines. Because apparently, they don't have enough time on Impact to fully explore and tell these stories. They don't have enough time to talk. They need a third hour to talk. There's so little room on this show for all the talking they need to do. They need a third hour. In fact, they had 6 minutes of wrestling. That was not enough time. They had to intrude on their talking time for wrestling. Damn it. I gotta go record another review. This sucks. Not recording a review sucks. This whole show sucks. Tweet Dixie. Please tweet Dixie. I want her to know my name. I want her to know my name is the Lord. The only chance this show has is that it somehow gets in her head that the show is awful. That she hires someone who knows how to tell a story, how to book a wrestling show, something. It has to get through. Eventually it has to. It won't. But I'm doing everything I can. You gotta help me. Until next time.